All right, Dave, it is that time once again. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's so good to be back. I can't believe it's been 2 weeks that we've been back together, or since we've been together. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so where were you, Dave, last week? We were missing you on the show.
I was hanging out at the Museum of the Weird. So if you've not had that experience, I will tell you it's worth going to Austin, Texas, just for this museum. You're going to see some of the strangest things you've ever seen in your lifetime. But I was hanging out there.
Well, that sounds very exciting. What was your favorite weird thing in Austin?
It had to have been the Iceman, and they'll say that that's everyone's favorite when they get in there, but it really is when you look at it. To think that here's this creature or whatever they deem it to be inside of this freezer type thing that they've had around for decades, and some guy ends up finding it that collects all this stuff for his museum in Austin, Texas, and buys it 30 years ago and then puts it in here. It's just hard to believe that all this stuff happens, but that was it. I did go for a conference, so it wasn't just for that. That got added on during the time we're together here. But I had a conference there where we were able to meet with a lot of other people that we do work with. So,
Dave, and I thought the official slogan for Austin was keep things weird, but it looks like it is the live music capital of the world.
yeah, and I could see where that would be the case. Now, if you get there downtown where this is, it is bar after bar after bar after bar, and they've all got live music going on. So a guy my age doesn't drink, not a place I really want to hang out, but for the right soul, I guess it is a great experience to go down there and just hang out all night and do what you do, whatever that is.
Well, Dave, we are so glad that you are back with us and you participate in with us every single week at 11 a.m. Central Time as we talk about retirement. And Dave, we've got a special show today. We always change things up. I think it's always fun when we come in and throw a wrench in here once in a while, but it's just really we're here to help people get retirement questions answered.
Yeah, I think the challenge is we keep running out of time to help people. We go through webinars, we go through these different events, and just questions upon questions upon questions, and items come in. It's always hard to find the time to be able to answer the questions that people have.
And Dave, today we are talking about getting safely through retirement. I'm going to pop up our little banner here. Tell me about this webinar that we just recently went through on Monday, I believe.
This is my favorite webinar of all the ones that I teach. And the biggest reason is because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where we address the top 10 financial risks that you're going to face during retirement. And this really creates a whole new paradigm for people because they've often looked at it as, hey, what does it take to get there? What does it take to save enough money? How much am I going to be able to spend? They forget that once they get in there, I mean, you've got 20, 30, 40 years of self-imposed unemployment that they've got to get through. A lot happens during that time. I mean, think back at your career. Many of you are going to be in retirement longer than you worked, and think of all the things that happened then. All the accidents, the things with kids, family, houses, with cars, whatever the case may be. That's not going to stop just because you get into retirement. And so it's our goal to help people better understand these. And it's a good eye-opening experience for many people.
And Dave, since we did this webinar, like you said, we just ran out of time. We had so many wonderful questions that came in. So I promised them that we would do a live event today, that we would cover a lot of those questions. Normally we come on here and we just have, some random questions that we put together that come into us. But this one I pulled specifically from this webinar. So I have a lot of questions we're going to try to get through today, but I don't want that to discourage those who are here with us live to continue to submit your questions. I know a lot of you come here because you have retirement questions on your mind. Maybe you've just heard about reverse mortgage, or maybe there's something in long-term care that you heard that you want to come on and ask those questions. So I'm going to encourage you to continue to submit those. And when we take our break from our other questions, we'll be able to pull some of those in. So Dave, if you're ready, I want to jump into some of these questions and let's see how we do today.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, we're talking about getting safely through retirement. This is a webinar we just recently went through. We had just so many great questions, Dave, and we're going to start with Howard. Howard was saying, should the younger worker max out their Roth contribution before starting traditional IRA contributions?
One of the things that you've got to look at is what's going on inside of your various Roth accounts. What options do you have available from a employer standpoint versus just the IRAs that you have? My recommendation isn't just for a younger spouse to do this. We've all got to look at getting money into these Roth accounts, because we're in a period of historically low tax rates. We believe that they're going to go up substantially over time. My belief somewhere around 2030 when we're going to have some major issues there. So everyone's got to look at it. Now, you can have some money left in those tax deferred accounts, but we don't want to get too much. And oftentimes employer matches, things of that nature, build up the assets we need there. But everyone needs to start looking at this.
Dave, if we're not contributing to anything with the word Roth in it right now, what's the first step we should do?
Is look at what you can do to get money into there. Now, some people it's going to be because they're not putting money into anything that's got any name on it. They're just spending all their money every month. But the first thing we've got to do is start getting money inside of there. Because again, when we look at it, it takes a lot of worry and risk off the table, especially for younger people where taxes are definitely not going to be lower in your future than they are today. And even for many of us in our 50s, 60s, we've got these same issues. Why not take that risk off the table now, get it out of the way so you can have a retirement? You don't have to worry about what your business partner is going to take.
Very, very true. Dave, let's get up Glenn's question now. Are income streams from fixed index annuities federal and state taxable? And does it get added to income for Social Security taxable calculations?
It depends. Perfect answer from a CPA, financial advisor. Really depends where those annuities are at. So if you've got annuities that are in your taxable bucket, if you've got them in your tax deferred, you're getting money off of those, you're going to pay tax on those, federal, state, and it is going to create provisional income. But something people often don't look at is you can put these into Roth accounts. So you could have an opportunity to get a guaranteed lifetime stream of tax-free income through these annuities. So something I'd recommend everyone to look at if they're looking at getting annuities and putting those in their retirement.
Dave, when you talk about that, it gets me kind of excited because right now the market is so volatile. And so for you and I, as we talked before the show, we're trying to make sure we have something that helps us sleep better at night. And what you're saying is this allows us to have that opportunity to really readjust maybe what we have in our life right now.
Yeah, many people have been very blessed to have what I call bubble gains. We've had great gains over the last couple of years because of what the stock market's done, but those could be eaten away overnight. In fact, some of the top economists out there are saying, look, everything in the market says some point this has got to crash. Can you imagine if you could put yourself in a position that you could take that risk off the table? You get into a product that if the market did continue to go up, hey, you get to go ride the wave with it. But if it ends up dropping, you stay with where you're at. You're not having to take that 20, 30, 40, some of them are even saying 50% drop. So great opportunity for people to really get themselves in a better position without having to go into cash. Now, a lot of people are taking that option, but not something I recommend for a lot of people, because if you're out too long, you got a major issue and the market doesn't turn down, just keeps going up. You've lost out on substantial gains that you could use for your future retirement.
And Dave, we have E-Ring joining us again. He was here with us last week, and he said if he maxes out the Roth, then as you know, no further IRA contributions would be allowed.
Yeah, and that is correct from an IRA standpoint. I appreciate you bringing this up. Now, again, if they've got 401ks, may have some options there. May also want to look at permanent life insurance, but you're right. It's not like you can go out and put maximum $6,000 into a Roth IRA, $6,000 in traditional. You've got to pick or choose there which one you're going to do.
And he's joining us from YouTube today. So we appreciate the comment and continue to go ahead and submit your comments and questions as we're diving through here. All right, Dave, this is a big one here I want to bring up from Jim. He says that we're surprised that you haven't mentioned I-bonds and then limited to the inflation adjusted Treasury savings bonds. They're limited to $10,000 per taxpayer plus $5,000 from federal tax refund per year, paying 7.1% this month. So let's talk about that, Dave, and tell me what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, in response to Jim's question, I'm not against these at all. In fact, again, when you look at the rates of return, you look at the amount of money that they're paying, the issue is you can't do a lot with your retirement with that amount of money. So a lot of times in our planning, we've got products, we've got principal protected products, CR, that have done over 20% this last year. Can you imagine being in an investment that's never going to lose, that's gone up 20% in a year? I mean, that's unbelievable. So a lot of us, we're using other products to fill in because we need more money going into them. But yeah, if you're in a situation, you've got 10 grand laying around that you can use and want to invest, these I-bonds could be a great opportunity for you.
And Dave, since we're on the bond train, I want to bring up one more here from April. Please advise regarding the Treasury savings bonds. I've had the question from 5 different clients since it was featured on CBNC a couple of months ago.
Yeah, so there's probably a couple of sides of this. One would be these I bonds and what's being put out there by the government. The other side is when we look at typical government bonds, like a 20 and 30-year bond, they're not doing what we would expect. Typically, these things are going to outpace your inflation. Well, we've got inflation, not sure where it's going to settle in for 2021, but somewhere between 6 and 8%. And yet you've got these treasury bonds that are doing, 1.5%. I mean, they're under 1.5%. So we've got some issues there that are concerning. This is part of some of the top economists' analysis. They look through and saying, hey, the market's not working the way it normally does. When we look back at history and things that have caused market collapses and market crashes, we've got a lot of those signs showing. We've got a lot of that stress happening. But hopefully that helps April answer the question. Not sure exactly how they've asked it as they've come in and talked to you.
Dave, I like this question from April too, because what we do is we help CPAs, right? So we're here to help and answer all of their questions and obviously get through retirement. But I love that she's talking because all these clients are now coming to her saying, hey, I need advice. So if we're sitting here and you want to give advice to the CPAs that are here joining us, and what advice do you have for them as people continually come in for retirement issues or questions? What can we say to April and to the rest of those out there that are saying, "Hey, I'm getting inundated with this right now"?
For most of them, what I'm going to tell you is to get some basic education on retirement. And again, we offer a ton of CPE that you can take advantage of, almost 20 hours, I think. That's going to go up probably 25 or 30 by the time we hit the end of this year with the classes that we have planned. But get some basic education. But the issue you have when we look at both industries, we say, okay, we've got CPAs and most of them that are getting questions are tax preparers. There is a lot of knowledge you have to be able to do your job there. And then you have financial planning. And especially if you're looking at risks like we do, there's a lot of knowledge you have to have there. It's often difficult for people to put both of those together and be successful with it. So my recommendation, get basic understanding, know that if you don't know something, feel free to partner up with someone like our advisors, those that we work with, so they can help answer those questions. They can get your clients where they need to be, because it's really difficult to do everything. And I know, because to some level I do everything and it's difficult. I spend my days educating, researching, doing things that oftentimes people don't have the ability to do. If you've also got to mix clients in there and keep up with all their needs and the way you make your revenue.
And I appreciate that, Dave. I also know that you love Social Security, Medicare. Well, I don't know if you love them, but you love to talk about them, and I think those are things that are important to do that. But let's dive into a few of those questions. So let me see if I can bring up one here from Nancy. Can a married couple apply Medicaid separately or jointly?
When we're talking about the medical programs of the government, both Medicare and Medicaid, they are separate programs. So this isn't something like your health insurance that you've got as a family where you can consolidate everything together, have one policy. Everything's going to be done separately. Now, Medicaid is a state-run program in conjunction with the federal government. Medicare is a federal-run program, but you are going to have different policies for each of you.
And Dave, with that one too, I've got Alan. How do you find a Medicare broker? Do you call a local health insurance company such as a BCBS?
Yeah, so what we've done is some research on our end. We've ended up doing a lot of interviews, a lot of talking to advisors. We do have a group. If you go to our website, you can get locked into them that can help you. But unfortunately, most health insurance companies don't offer this service. It's a unique service that is being offered out there. So if you'd like some direction, we're happy to give that to you. Just reach out to us or go to our website, because it is hard. It's hard to connect with one that you know is going to have your best interest, because unfortunately, most people don't understand it enough. And the way commissions are paid on the various products, there's times that a broker could definitely look after their interests more so than they're going to look after your own.
All right, Dave, let me jump in here. I've got one from Ron. He said, I was laid off during COVID and still have funds in my former employer's 401k. Can I still contribute to that 401k for must I roll it over to an IRA account?
Yeah, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to roll it over into an IRA, because again, you have no wages there to be able to make those contributions into. So you could just set up a separate IRA and then put the money into there, or you could roll the account out. Now, I will tell you, for many people, what you want to do is just get that money rolled out of there. A lot of times 401ks are limited on what you can invest in, may have higher fees than you would typically have on your own IRA account. So something I'd want to talk to an advisor about, see if I could get some further direction to maybe make that full adjustment of just getting that removed out of your 401k completely.
Dave, do you see people like Ron that when they leave a company, either just on their own or being let go like this because of the circumstances, but you see them just leave that money sitting there? Because I feel like a lot of times people are looking at this by saying, hey, I just kind of forgot about it, and they just move on, but there's still opportunities for this.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen, and we see all of them. One is where people leave it there. They've got a large balance. They think, hey, it's done a good job. And we don't like change. We don't want to have to move accounts and worry about it. So we just leave everything there. We've got the other side that may has smaller balances that says, look, not enough there for me to really worry about how's this ever going to help my retirement. Let me just liquidate the money. And especially if they've had COVID and been unemployed, they may need those dollars. They end up paying the 10% penalty plus the tax and just liquidate. And then there's the other segment that's got small enough amount, they forget about it. They get a new job, they move maybe to a new state, new area, they don't provide a forwarding address. And there are millions of dollars that are just sitting out there in unclaimed property from retirement accounts that people have just forgotten about from companies that they work for.
And I want to remind you that if you're watching with us live, go ahead and get your retirement questions submitted, and we'll do our best to get those in the middle of all of our questions here. Remember, we are here to help answer your questions, to get you on the right path and really to take action this year. I think this is the thing, Dave, you and I have talked about several times, is just making sure we start with some type of action. It's so great to get all this education, all this knowledge, but it doesn't do any good for us if we're not taking action or getting our clients to take action.
And that's my goal for 2022. I'll tell you, is to get people to take that action. We've changed all of our webinars to where we really request that people take notes, that they write down the things we're going to take action on. And then we give them opportunities to take action within our own company, things that they can do to help themselves that may be on their list. Now, everything that we offer may not be on their list, and they're going to have other items that we can't do. But we really want people to take action. This is a year to focus on what you're doing, get things straightened out so you just can take that worry off the table of what's going to look like in the future.
And I appreciate that. Dave, let me pull up Doug's question here. It's kind of more of a statement, but he said tax-free income may still be taxable for AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax purposes.
Yeah, really, when we look at it again, if you look at those Roths, they're not going to be. If we look at the life insurance distributions, they're not going to be. So a lot of the structure that we're doing is not going to create issues. But yeah, if you've got those municipal bonds, many people want to put those into the retirement at large amounts because they deem them to be a tax-free asset. Yeah, you may have some AMT there. So this is why we have planners. This is why we have advisors. So they can work through this stuff, figure out what's going to be the best option for you to maximize the assets and income that you have.
And Dave, let me jump back over to our live feed here. We've got E-Ring back from YouTube on here. And they said, I like keeping the 401k with prior employer for liability protection, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were.
So I can see some value to that. Again, when we look at where these 401ks are, and again, depending on where you put your assets, what you move them into, if you do end up with a lawsuit, certain retirement assets can be protected, others are not. So definitely I'm not against doing that. You've just got to look at whether that protection is worth the benefits that you're getting out of that account. And again, for some people, fine. I don't have an issue with it. If you got large enough balance, you got enough investments in there. But again, what we often look at too for people, if you've got all your assets inside of there, which many people do, you're not principal protecting. There's no way you can principal protect those assets inside of there. Now, you may be able to look at a guaranteed lifetime annuity that is offered through some of these programs, but the challenge is they're not large enough that you can't put death benefits on them. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't do. So you've got to take the whole picture, and I appreciate you bringing this up because this is where the individualization comes. What's important to you? What are you trying to solve? What are the other ways maybe you could solve the issue, and then put a plan together that really works?
So Dave, what you're saying is my retirement and your retirement are going to look different?
They are going to look different because I've got 5,000 kids that I got to take care of still. So I'm going to have to continue to work forever. But for you, hopefully you don't have that quite so long.
Yeah. I always say all my two kids, it really makes sense, but
Yeah, ours just seems to keep growing, our family. So who knows? By the time I'm done, I might have those 5,000 kids.
Exactly. Well, again, E-Ring, thank you for your question there. And Dave, let's jump on here. I've got other questions I need to pull up here. So I got Luis is why $5,000 as suggested tax deferred bucket? Can that number be adjusted as investments continue to grow?
Yeah, so let me talk about this. And when we look at it, most people are not going to have 500,000, meaning that's not going to be the number for really anyone out there as a perfect number. What we're talking about is putting the right amount into that tax deferred bucket so you can use your standard deduction. It's my belief we'll continue to have a standard deduction to offset those RMDs. So if we're trying to get to a tax-free environment and we can put the right amount inside of the bucket to be able to allow us to take our RMDs out and then allow the $25,900 that we currently have as a standard deduction to offset that for a married couple, and then also keep it low enough to not have provisional income so we don't have to Social Security taxed, we've accomplished what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to eliminate tax rate risk. So there are a lot of miscellaneous pieces that play into this. And again, if you've got growth, things you've got to look at now is the standard deduction inflation adjusted? Yes. But also, when we look at the older we get, the more we've got to take out of these deferred accounts. And again, if the growth's higher, it's going to be a larger amount. So this is where the planning comes in. But this is why we use the 500 for a married couple, saying, hey, if you had no other income, this is all you had, and you had Social Security that was at a smaller amount, this may be a perfect amount for you to put in there and then be able to get tax-free income because the way the standard deduction provisional income work.
And Dave, I'm glad you clarified. I said 5,000. So 500,000 is probably a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. If you want 5,000 in that bucket, not going to make much of an impact on taxes, retirement, or much else. But unfortunately, CR, you bring that number up. We do a new webinar called the Evolving Retirement Law, where I talk about some of the problems that we have in America. And you've got 22% of Americans that have less than 5,000 set aside for retirement. Can you imagine? I mean, that's going to get blown 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. I mean, how long is that going to last? And yet we've got 22% of Americans that are finding themselves in that situation, and 15% more that have nothing. They've put nothing aside. So 37% of America really in a major bad situation, which leads into the numbers that 40% of Americans will live off Social Security only. And we see those numbers correlating there.
So you're saying, David, that if we have 5,000 set aside, that's going to be our retirement. So once we get to retirement, we're basically just going to live off of Social Security and that $5,000, and that's what we have.
Yeah, so if you look at it, that means that you can take a 3% distribution. If we take our standard withdrawal rate, you would be able to take $15 a year. That's a buck a month. You're going to get $1.25 a month. So with Dollar Store, Dollar Tree's increasing their prices to $1.25 from $1. So I guess you go buy one snack, one item there, and hopefully scrounge some tax up on the way. But that's all you're getting out of those accounts if that's what you have. Now, obviously, people aren't going to do that. They're going to liquidate those assets down and put in a situation where they just have Social Security.
And Dave, what if we're a single? So we're at 500,000 for a married couple, but what about single?
250 is the max. And this is something that couples have to be aware of too when they look into this. A spouse can die at any time. Now, I do have some good news for you. Many people think that they get into retirement and somehow they're going to have all these accidents that are going to kill them. Very small percentage, 1 or 2% that end up dying in retirement because of accidents. We've all gone through our glory days. We're not taking the risks that we used to take when we were younger. But you look at that, and once a spouse dies, obviously the 500 now has to go down to 250. So, how are we preparing for potential deaths inside of our relationships? But yes, for a single person, going to be less than what a married couple is going to be able to do.
Dave, one of the things you really focus on is helping people to eliminate risk in retirement. And I wanted to bring up this question here from Stephen. He said, how do you suggest you manage concentration of credit risk in placing assets in fixed index annuities? Isn't there risk that the insurance company goes bankrupt?
I appreciate you asking this question, Stephen, when you look at it. And yes, any company out there obviously can have financial issues. When we look back, there have been times where insurance companies have failed, that they've had issues. But there's a couple of great things that happen here. Number one, we've got a state insurance fund in every state. And number two, we've got other insurance companies. The last thing any of these insurance companies want is a headline on the front page of the paper saying, Sue and John Jones had a big life insurance policy, company went under, and now John's passed away. Sue's getting nothing because the insurance company wasn't there. So oftentimes after the state pays what they will, these insurance companies come in and buy them out. So as we look at it historically, they're very safe. The government regulates them to where they can't get over leveraged. We've got these gaps in there. Now, all that being said, I would not rush out and find the lowest tiered insurance company you can find, the lowest rated, that's maybe given an amazing return, and invest there. You want big companies with good ratings. I mean, there's a number of them that we work with that have been around over 100 years and have been very successful in what they do because they've learned how to mitigate risk during ups, downs, everything that goes on inside the market.
And Dave, as I talked about just briefly before, you're helping people to reduce or even eliminate risk in retirement. Why is that so important to you right now that you help people that are on their way towards retirement?
Because there's too many people that are getting into the middle of the retirement and find themselves in horrible situations. All you got to do is go walk through a nursing home and talk to the patients inside those nursing homes. What you're going to find, most of them never intended, obviously, to be there. Now, some of it is obviously because of situations that have happened with their health, but then you also look at those out on the streets. We've got elderly that are living out on the streets because risk got involved, and we're seeing more things, elder abuse. Something else we're seeing heavily, these scams. People are losing their whole retirement to organizations or people that are trying to take that money away. I'm trying to prevent that. I don't want to see 70, 80, 90-year-olds that are struggling that never should have had they put a plan together.
And Dave, one of the questions I want to bring up is from Steve here. He said, "What is the link to sign up for seminars referred to?" So what he's saying is, and I brought this up here, is because a lot of people that go to these webinars, Dave, you always talk about you have so many other webinars. You've got webinar after webinar, and I want people to understand why you do all these webinars and how they can find these on the website.
Yeah. So what we find is there's obviously basic information everyone needs to have. Again, I will tell you, you need to understand Social Security. You need to understand Medicare. You need to understand long-term care. But there's other things that may not apply to everyone else. Again, if you look at Roths, maybe Roth accounts aren't right for you. Maybe you've got a pension and your Social Security. So annuity may not be something that you need. So what we're trying to do is give the basic education everyone needs. But then what we realize is there's some deep dives that need to happen on the topics we talk about. So we go as deep as we can. Now, the reality of it is, please, no one should use my education as a replacement for an advisor, because we're going to have, in any given class, we could have anywhere from probably 100 on the low end up to 1,000 plus on the high end. Well, I'm educating to a group. I'm educating to the masses. So what you need to do is then take that, get with an advisor that can work with you individually and help you work through whatever those things that you need to have done are.
And Dave, I put a link in there for the webinar. So you can go to retirementriskadvisors.com/events, and that'll help you to find all the webinars that he's referring to and how you can get signed up for these in the future. Because like you said, Dave, there's so many different opportunities out there to become educated. And that's the reason we're here first, is help you get that education. Then that way, when you're meeting with an advisor, you're able to make that decision together. And I feel like it's a better relationship instead of walking down blindly saying, what do I do?
And the great thing is there's no hard and fast rule either of what process you've got to take. Now, I would tell anyone, go to our Getting Safely Through Retirement course first. If I had the ability to tell everyone where to go first, get that basic understanding, and then take our master classes and everything else. But you know what? If you show up in one of our reverse mortgage classes first, that's not a problem, because number one, you're going to get great education on reverse mortgage, but you're going to get an understanding of how I teach. And if you like that, hey, use that to go to other classes. Use that as a way to get additional CPE credits, do all the things that you need to do, and to lead you to gain the knowledge you need to take action.
And Dave, we just have about a minute left, so I want to pull up Jacqueline's question as we end here. Will you address the backdoor Roth contribution?
Yeah. So what's happening here is we've got income limits on Roth IRAs. So people find themselves in positions, make too much money. They can't get their money into these Roth IRAs through traditional contributions. And so what's been created is what's called a backdoor Roth or a mega backdoor Roth if you've got a 401k, where you're putting money into your tax deferred account and then immediately moving it over. So you're paying the taxes on it. It's after tax. You're not getting any benefits off of this, but you're able to move it into your traditional and then immediately do a conversion over into your Roth account. One big thing I will tell you, well, two, I guess, if you're looking at the mega backdoor Roth 401k, be careful with the ERISA laws, with highly compensated employee laws. There's some of those you've got to be careful with if you're an executive or a business owner and have employees. Number two, this isn't as simple as you think it is if you've got a regular IRA. Many people think, hey, I've got $100,000 in an IRA. I can put my $6,000 in after tax, move it over, and I've done my backdoor Roth. Government says no. If you put $6,000 in, now you got 106,000. If you move 6,000 over, small percentage is all you're going to get that's after tax. Everything else you've not paid tax on. So it starts getting commingled, creates major issues with tracking basis and all those things. Backdoor Roths only work if you don't have any traditional IRAs. You've had to have moved all that money over, not have any accounts. And it doesn't work either if you just put it in a new account and you have another account out there that's got 100 grand. It's going to go across the spectrum. So again, not as easy as people think. The government's trying to take these away. It was in the Build Back Better proposal and legislation to make this go away January 1st, 2022. I don't think these are going to be around that much longer. I think they're going to move it into some other legislation if Build Back Better doesn't pass, and you're going to see these go away.
Dave, I was just going to ask if those are going to be around, because we do get a lot of people asking that question as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And again, Dave, thank you so much for being here, for spending the last 30 minutes with us. And I want to thank all those that have been with us live and those on replay. Thank you for being here as we kind of did the special tribute to all those that were on the Getting Safely Through webinar. Dave, sometimes it's just so hard to get through all the questions because you get inundated. I mean, you get sometimes hundreds of questions. So I wanted to pull some out here specifically that we did not get to answer.
Yeah, we stopped counting about a year ago, and we were almost at 5,000. We educated more people last year than we did the year before. I've got to believe we're way over 10,000. Hard to count that many questions at this point. But yeah, it's hard to get to. I mean, when you break that down on a weekly basis and the amount of time it takes. And again, I get emailed questions every day from people that try to help answer those, from CPAs that are trying to help themselves or their clients. But we do our best. We're going to give you as much information as we can, answer as many of those questions as we can as we go through the process.
And I want to encourage you that if you did not get your question answered and you're here on a replay, go ahead and get that submitted at retirementriskadvisors.com. On the Contact Us page, there's a place where you can just go and submit your question, and we'll get those on future shows. So again, we're grateful that you were here with us. And Dave, as you started out and talked about that, so you want to make this a year of action. So I'm going to ask you at the end, your advice for those that are really here at the end saying, okay, Dave, what do I do now? What's the next step?
Yeah, write down 5 things that you're going to do towards your retirement, whatever that may be for you. Write down 5 things. They can be simple, they can be complex, and then start working on those to get yourself to where you need to be.
All right. So again, we're here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. If I'm not here, if Dave's not here, we always have somebody here. Last week, we had one of our advisors. And if you missed those shows, you can always go back on our Facebook page and you can capture and watch all of those other videos that we've already released. Even on YouTube, you can do the same. But again, thank you for being here. And Dave, we'll see you again next week.
Okay. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.